Welcome to Awesome Movie Year, the podcast where we take a look back at an awesome year for movies, which is every year. My name is Josh Bell, film critic and writer, and I am joined by my co-host.
I'm Jason Harris, filmmaker, comedian, cinema lover, and a lover of cinema.
Both of those things?
Wow.
What?
You know, I take the words and I put them one way and then I put them another way, and it makes me sound like I do more than I do.
Yeah, well, we all love cinema here at Awesome Movie Year, and we hope that our listeners also love cinema, and that's why they're listening. So we have reached the end of our season on the films of 2003, and as we do every season, we're taking a look back at our various categories, what we covered, what we didn't cover, what we could have covered, some suggestions from you, the listeners, as to what you were interested in for the season. And just kind of giving a general assessment of the year. So see if we did a good job or not.
Dave, do you think we did a good job?
I think you guys did a great job, to be honest with you. And
Dave,
I think the listenership proves it.
Out of 5, from 1 to 5, what would you give this season of Awesome Movie Year?
Out of
like a 4.
Out of 5 good.
4?
Yeah.
Out of 5 what, though, Josh? 5 good jobs.
Yeah, out of 5 what's?
5 Awesome Movie Years?
Yeah.
I don't know. Out of 5 piecing it together podcasts, Dave, what would you give this season of Awesome?
In that case, 5.
All right. So we kicked off the season with our box office champ episode, and we actually talked about the number 2 movie at the box office, Finding Nemo, because the number 1 movie was The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, which, spoiler, we ended up talking about in our Best Picture episode.
And pretty much every other episode of this season. That thing was everywhere in 2000.
It was a very dominant force in the cinema of 2003. Other movies that were big at the box office, The Matrix Reloaded and The Matrix Revolutions, which I forgot both came out in the same year, which was something that was done. Unlike The Lord of the Rings, I feel like that the whole Matrix sequel thing, there's like, no one talks about those anymore.
Right, but that's part of the influence of Lord of the Rings, right? They're like, oh, we can film these 2 and then we'll be the Lord of the Rings. And you're like, no, you should just be one Matrix.
Yeah, I haven't seen those movies, those Matrix sequels. I kind of wonder if they hold up.
They didn't.
Yeah, probably not.
But Josh, there is a new one coming.
There is, and I hope that's good. And that's, that'll probably give me a chance to revisit those previous sequels to see how I feel about them now. So also big at the box office, the first Pirates of the Caribbean movie, The Curse of the Black Pearl, which we also mentioned a little bit because Orlando Bloom from The Lord of the Rings. It was quite a big year for him.
He's a hunk.
He is a hunk. Also, I think number 5 at the box office, Bruce Almighty, which I didn't remember being quite that successful. But Jim Carrey, still a force at the box office, I guess. And The Last Samurai with Tom Cruise, another movie that I didn't remember being quite that successful. But weird assortment of box office hits in 2003.
Josh and I saw The Last Samurai at a screening that the public was not invited to. So we were in a huge theater with like 4 other people. And it feels very reminiscent of today when you go to the movie theater. Get your vaccine, people. Go see the movies. It's a lot of fun. Also, Ken Watanabe, big fan. Good job in The Last Samurai.
Wow, you got a lot in there in just those 2 sentences.
After the box office champ, Josh, we have a formula here, and it leads us to first feature. And this was a controversial pick this year. Not really the pick, but the argument behind the scenes between me and you, Josh, because I was adamant. I said, gosh darn it, I want to do the station agent, Tom McCarthy. And I'm so glad we did. I think maybe that might have been one of the best rediscoveries of the season for me. Some of the other ones that we talked about were Patty Jenkins, Monster, and Rob Zombie, House of a Thousand Corpses was what you were angling for at first, Josh. Do you think we made the right choice? Also, I wanted to mention a few others. Catherine Hardwicke, 13, Paul Feig, I Am David, which I've never seen, and his name might be Feig. I don't know, whatever. But Josh, how do you feel about the one we chose and the rest of them?
I think it was a good choice. I mean, my argument, I think, was that Tom McCarthy's career, if we're looking at a first feature as the debut of a notable filmmaker, I think his career has been a bit uneven, let's say. And I was arguing for Rob Zombie, not that House of a Thousand Corpses is a better movie than The Station Agent, because it is not. But just that he's, I think, had more of a consistent career, maybe. But The Station Agent is great, and I'm glad we talked about it. It was an interesting discussion. I think there's a lot not only with Tom McCarthy, but so many of the actors in that movie that it was a big breakout for them. So there was a lot to look at with The Station Agent. And I think, some of those other choices were even less promising, whether it's filmmakers who, haven't had as big or as varied a career, or where the first movie, like that Paul Feig movie, is not really notable, compared to their later work. So I think it was a good choice, and I'm glad that you argued for it. And we have to mention, of course, in that episode, Jason committed in sort of the discussion of the uneven career of Tom McCarthy. Jason was going to check out Tom McCarthy's recent Disney Plus original film, Timmy Failure, Mistakes Were Made. Was that a mistake?
No, and I did do that, Josh, unlike you who did not watch Killer Bro Dudes or whatever it was. And you, Dave, who still hasn't gotten us an interview with Martin Brest. Timmy Failure, Mistakes Were Made. Let me tell you about it, Josh. It's a picturesque day in Portland, Oregon. No, Timmy Failure is fun. It's based on books. I'm pretty sure he had kids who read the books and were like, oh, I could do a project and, do something nice for my kids. He uses the city well. The kid actor is very like, I'm a kid, but I'm really an adult type person. And there's a lot of fun with Timmy Failure and Wallace Shawn in there as his teacher. Scarlett, my daughter, and I watched it together. We both liked it. So I'm not going to go so far as to recommend Timmy Failure, Mistakes Were Made. I'm going to say if you're looking for something to watch with the kids, with the family, and you're like, we've seen everything, you probably haven't seen Timmy Failure, Mistakes Were Made. And you might as well.
Quite right. If you've seen everything, watch this movie.
It's not bad. It's not bad. I'm sure if I put it up against Tom McCarthy's worst films like The Cobbler, this would be better.
Better than The Cobbler. See it if you've seen everything else.
It's not bad, Josh.
All right.
It's not a bad film.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you followed through with your commitment to watching that movie, and it really added something. For our box office flop episode, we talked about Geely, which is one of the most legendary flops of all time. So it was really no competition for this. Although I will say that just as 2003, was quite a year for Christmas movies, as we talked about later in the season, it was quite a year for legendary flops, because From Justin to Kelly, the movie starring Kelly Clarkson and Justin Guarini from American Idol, also came out in 2003. Also one of the most notable failures of all time. And I've never seen, but I think that probably would have been fascinating to talk about. So amazing that there's two flops of that magnitude. Jason, I think you'd also mentioned Willard, the remake with Crispin Glover, which I guess was a failure at the box office. I liked that movie or I liked it at the time. So
I did too.
But it's not on the level of those others in terms of failing.
No, the thing From Justin and Kelly would have been interesting. I'm sure it's horrible. And it seems like because they're both season 1 American Idol, it was this show is so popular. Let's get movie made. Write script now,
Yes.
And one day later, there's we have script. Now we write songs. We have songs. And then I'm sure it's horrible, but there was this weird trend of reality TV stars in movies like Colleen Haskell in The Animal with Rob Schneider, and stuff like that. So, we would have done ourselves a disservice had we not talked about Geely. But From Justin to Kelly, any other year might have made the cut.
Yeah, I think Geely is just such a monumental, notable failure that we could not possibly. Even Timmy Failure is not the level of failure that Geely is.
I was gonna say, wouldn't the Cat in a Hat fit as well?
Oh, that's true. That is that this year? Was that a big? I know
was
it was
2003.
Reviled.
It made its budget, but nothing more than that. But I'm surprised it even made that much, because that is really one of the worst.
And that was Mike Myers, right?
Yeah.
Mike Myers, and the idea that I think on the heels of, again, Jim Carrey, the Juggernaut, having done so well in the Grinch movie, they decided they were going to do that, and I've never seen that, but I don't want to. So
don't blame.
I don't want to see it either, Josh.
Well, it's a good thing we didn't cover it then.
Yeah, Josh. Then we went to the Palme d'Or winner at Cannes, which was the very heavy film Elephant by Gus Van Sant about school shootings. Which sadly are still in the news. They haven't been in the last year, but we know they're going to be in again.
Making a comeback.
Sadly.
What?
Horribly.
Yeah.
Other things that played in Cannes that year in competition, Josh. The Barbarian Invasions, which was nominated for Best Foreign Film, that's out of Canada. The Brown Bunny, where Vincent Gallo receives oral sex from Chloe Sevigny on screen, and I remember that was a big deal at the time. Dogville by Lars von Trier, and Mystic River, which we've talked about here and there. Swimming Pool, which I think was a movie you like, Josh.
I do, yeah. I noted that down as one to mention, the Francois Ozon movie, which is a great kind of erotic thriller with Ludivine Sagnier that I like a lot. I mean, I liked in 2003. I haven't seen it since then, but I did enjoy it.
And that was main competition. If you want, I can keep reading stuff, but I think we
get a sense of that. Yeah, Mystic River came up in a lot of different places for this year, and the Barbarian Invasions I think came up a couple times elsewhere.
I'd like to see that, but that's a sequel to a film from like 1986.
Yeah, so it's Denis Arcand he's a big French Canadian director, and I don't believe I've seen either that or the original that it was a sequel to.
A lot of things played out a competition that we did talk about on this season. Hey Josh, did you ever see The Brown Bunny? Remember what a controversy that was?
Right? I mean, that was a huge thing with Roger Ebert, where he, just completely trashed it. And then Vincent Gallo put a curse on him to give him cancer, I think it was. And they had a whole very public, sort of argument over this. And then it was recut after Cannes, and before it was released to wider audiences. And Ebert sort of changed his tune on it and said it was actually a much better movie after it was recut. I've seen Buffalo 66, which was Vincent Gallo's first movie as a director, and talk about weirdos,
yeah, but Buffalo 66 is a pretty good movie.
Buffalo 66 was,
I'm not mistaken, or Philip Baker Hall, one of those like real good act.
I haven't seen it since it was originally released, but I do remember thinking it was good, and that was part of the reason that he got all this attention on what is he doing next. When he made The Brown Bunny, but he's gone way off the deep end since then. So, and I have not seen The Brown Bunny. Have you, Jason, seen it?
No, I did like Buffalo 66 quite a lot though. Dave, did you?
I saw it. I thought it was pretty good, but
in its original cut.
That I'm not sure. It was a cut. I'll tell you that much. But
I don't know if that original Cannes cut is available anywhere.
I don't think so.
Yeah. I think it's only the later cut that's available.
I mean, that was a huge movie story that year.
Yeah,
it was. Yeah, and especially because Ebert was so vocal about it, made it into a huge thing.
Do you think Vincent Gallo takes credit for Ebert's later illnesses from the curse?
I hope not. I mean, I think he kind of backpedaled too, because he did not come off very well saying those things. So
he released him from the curse,
I guess, or he said he was joking or that he was overreact. I don't remember all the details of it, but that's really a sad thing if you're going to want to take credit for someone's terminal cancer. Jeez.
Just not a good look, Vincent Gallo.
Yeah, no, definitely not. So let's move on. In our documentary episode, we talked about Errol Morris's The Fog of War, which was the Oscar winner for Best Documentary that year. And Errol Morris, certainly one of the most notable documentary filmmakers ever. So, important to kind of take a look at his work. A lot of interesting documentaries, though, from this year. We talked about potentially covering, including My Architect, which I like that movie a lot. It's kind of a personal film from that director, Nathaniel Kahn, I think is his name. Capturing the Friedmans, which was, I think, Jason's suggestion. The Weather Underground, about the 1960s radical group. Lost in La Mancha, which is a fun film about filmmaking, about Terry Gilliam's efforts to make The Man Who Killed Don Quixote. Touching the Void, a great film about mountaineers stuck in weather on the side of a mountain. And Spellbound, which is a feel-good documentary about kids in spelling bees, which I think maybe played festivals in 2003 and was released more widely in 2004. So maybe we can revisit that.
No, I was definitely happy with The Fog of War. I think I mentioned Capturing the Friedmans in that it was a big cultural impact for a documentary. But I do agree with you. We both like Lost in La Mancha. Any documentary that talks about how hard filmmaking is usually pretty interesting from what we've seen. Touching the Void, I remember, is just, ooh, man, that is a real, keeps you on the edge of your seat. type thing, kind of like Free Solo, if you've seen that in the last few years. And Spellbound, I think, might be the most influential of them all, because since this time we've seen these like science fair or like pitching competitions, and or Boys State, right, where you're like going into these weird like academic competitions, but it's really about finding quirky characters who you really kind of either root for or root against, even though they're kids, right? So, but the Fog of War, really, really good, and McNamara, very riveting main subject.
Yeah, and yeah, I think you're right. Spellbound is hugely influential as a documentary, and we see it up till even now. I thought you mentioned pitching competitions. That movie, Own the Room, which was a recent Disney Plus.
Boys State too.
Right, Boys State too. Yeah, both of those were very recent, so we see that influence right through to today. And I remember liking Spellbound. It was a fun little film. My pick was Down with Love, the romantic comedy pastiche from Peyton Reed with Ewan McGregor and Renee Zellweger, which I love and I was happy to pick. I think I think this is the second season in a row where I picked kind of a semi-obscure weird movie that I love and failed to convince Jason of its greatness. But I'm still happy we talked about it. And honestly, I was trying to look. I don't know that I considered anything else for this.
All right.
I was just
you committed.
It was immediately Down with Love. That's the one. Let's do it. So, and
Hey Josh, what was the other one that you're referencing that you didn't convince me?
Night of the Comet from 1984.
Oh yeah, that you did not.
Yeah, which you liked even less than Down with Love, I think. But I recommend both of those.
Down with Love was fun.
If it's any consolation, you definitely won me over with this one. It's one of my favorite things I've watched this year.
That is a consolation. So thank you, Dave. And I definitely saw on social media some responses from people who love that movie. So, hopefully we, satisfied some people with it.
I think it's a good pick. I don't love the movie, right. But that's okay.
Yeah, it's fine. Mm-hmm. You don't always have to
love
agree.
Everything.
Yeah.
See, that's how you have an adult conversation, guys.
All right.
We moved on to foreign film, where we chose City of God, and again, talking about a rediscovery. Man, this one held me just as tightly as it did the first time. I love this film, and again, so influential. We still see it today. The shooting style, the colors, the use of music, and kind of cinema imagery together. And not to say that Morales was the only one to do it, and Katia Lund, but this was a very influential movie. Josh, I'm going to name some others. You can jump in I'll name the first few that I was thinking of, and then you can take over from there, because I've seen some and you've seen probably more than I have. So The Triplets of Belleville was a movie I always recommend. It's a really interesting French animated movie about three old lady triplets, and it's got a lot of good music and a really fun animation style. I think that's kind of like a lost animation classic type thing. Old Boy, I'm still going to hold out that we do a bonus episode on it. Let's hope. Who knows? But I think, when we're talking about influential foreign films, we got to go to Old Boy. An Bak, the Thai warrior, super fun, and always fun to reference when you're on stage and you see a man in a sleeveless shirt. That's always a good reference. I never saw The Saddest Music in the World, but I'm sure it's weird because it's Gaspar Noé, right?
No, it's Guy Madden. It is weird. It's Guy Madden.
Oh, it's Guy Madden.
But it also would not have qualified because it's a Canadian film in English. So I don't think it would have fit in our parameters for this category. But I have seen it and it is weird.
Josh, why don't you take the rest then?
if you want. The Barbarian Invasions, we already mentioned that's a French-Canadian film. Some Jason, I think that you had listed that were maybe award nominated, but that I wasn't really familiar with. Osama, which is a film set in Afghanistan, In This World, and The Snow Walker, both of which I'm not particularly familiar with. But I think In This World also won some big awards for the year. And I had suggested Crimson Gold, which is Iranian film that's interesting to check out. But I think, City of God, as you say, is so influential and really, continues to have a big following. So I think that was a great choice. And maybe we'll get to Old Boy. I like Old Boy a lot. And Park Chan-wook, I think, is a great director. So
how do you feel about An Bak?
I mean, Tony Jaa is he's a great martial artist. He's not a great, not a good movie, really.
I think it goes back, when we talked about Meals on Wheels. just the physical stunts that they're able to pull off are really impressive to me.
Yeah,
so.
no, you're right. And I am not really big on martial arts movies. And I think especially martial arts movies where it's just like, here's some cool stunts and the rest is worthless. It just doesn't grab me. So that's my thought on that.
Next on the list was my pick, where I picked Matchstick Men, aka Not Bandits. I do recommend Bandits, and I'm glad we watched Matchstick Men. Like I said, Ridley Scott, Nicolas Cage, when he was still like trying to fit somewhere in the world of humanity, not just Nicolas Cage, and Sam Rockwell, and of course Josh, who stole the movie, every scene she's in.
Alison Lohman, great in that film.
So good.
Yeah.
So good, man. Some other ones I was thinking about, Lost in Translation, which doesn't really connect with me, and it should, because it's Sofia Coppola and Bill Murray, Scarlett Johansson, and I feel like maybe I need to rewatch that. School of Rock, I love Richard Linklater, Jack Black. That's a good, fun movie. Kill Bill Volume 1, a lot of people had wanted, and we've done a Tarantino movie. I like Kill Bill 1. I like Kill Bill 2 also. So, and then the last one, I think another kind of one that's kind of going under the radar probably now, but a really good movie, Shattered Glass, about based on a true story about a news reporter at a newspaper who gets caught plagiarizing like everything. And it's got Hayden Christensen, who I thought could not act at all because of his work in those Star Wars sequels from George Lucas. And then I watched this and I'm like, oh, he can act. It's just George Lucas making him talk like a weird robot that's ruining this. I think that's Billy Ray's movie. I recommend that movie. That's a good movie right there.
Yeah, I agree. Shattered Glass is really good, and that would have been one to talk about. And maybe it got a lot of attention at the time it came out, but maybe has been forgotten a bit. So that would have been cool. But I love Matchstick Men. I feel like that was a weird thing where Dave and I liked that more than you did, even though it was your pick.
Right, you did. And that again, we're talking about rediscovery, right? And like I watched that one and I'm like, I didn't like it as much as the first time, but I feel like we rediscovered so many others this season, it really didn't matter to me.
Yeah, I was very happy with you for making that pick.
I aim to please, buddy.
And you succeed. So Sundance, we talked about the Grand Jury Prize winner, American Splendor, which I think was another great rediscovery for us.
Love it.
Really love that film.
Yeah.
Also at Sundance, the Grand Jury Prize for documentary went to Capturing the Freedmans, which we've mentioned. The Audience Award for drama went to The Station Agent, which we've also already mentioned. A few other big indie films of the time, All the Real Girls from David Gordon Green, 13, which you mentioned, Catherine Hardwicke's movie, which I think is horrible, and Pieces of April, which I think is also horrible. But both of those movies were big indie films at the time. And I've never seen All the Real Girls, but David Gordon Green has had quite a weird career.
I haven't seen it either, but fun fact, I did see 13 with my grandma in the movie.
Oh, how was that?
I mean, my grandma was so cool. It's like, it's like weird, but not nearly as weird as anything could have been, because she was just such an awesome lady. It was like, I'm seeing this with a friend and we had a discussion about it.
That's lovely.
Okay.
What a nice little story.
So, yeah. I mean, I think when you hear that, you hear like, oh, you saw 13 with your grandma, you think it's going to be like the worst situation possible, right?
Right.
But no, it was great because my grandma was great.
Wonderful.
You know what else is great, Josh? The Best Picture of 2003. That's how you do a segue in this business, friends.
Nice work.
It's The Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, just a monolith of power and awards, and not really a monolith of anything because it was the third in a trilogy. So, but what an influential film. What a success critically and with crowds, financially and award-wise. Great film. Josh, the other ones we've mentioned up for Best Picture, Lost in Translation, Master and Commander, The Far Side of the World, which did win Best Cinematography, Mystic River, and Seabiscuit. Mattrace, Josh. Mattrace.
Seabiscuit. Yeah. Some of the, Seabiscuit is one of those movies that was like this, big prestige thing. And like, who watches Seabiscuit anymore? I don't know.
I mean, I'm looking, like, I know you hate House of Sand and Fog.
Oh, I really do.
In America was there. The Cooler was there. The Last Samurai. Like, there are other movies that could have taken that spot there.
Yeah, a lot of other movies.
Finding Nemo. How about Finding Nemo?
Absolutely. How about Finding Nemo? So, and yeah, Master and Commander has a weird cult following now, even though it was nominated for all those awards, but it was not a box office success. But there are people who like ardently defend that movie, which I don't think anyone does that for Seabiscuit.
I wonder, I mean, if that's the case, again, that would be another one to rewatch. And
yeah, I think that would be, because I remember seeing it and thinking, not that it was bad. It was just there wasn't really much to it. But people are like crazy for it.
Maybe we got to do a second season on 2003.
Maybe we do. Next up was Dave's pick. You want to talk about your pick and what else you might have come up with, Dave?
Sure. Well, we talked about Todd Phillips' Old School, and of course, The Room was a major thing for me, but, spoiler alert, it's coming up. Other things that I'd considered, also just like Jason, Kill Bill, of course. Also Freddy versus Jason, which I think, as bad as it is a lot of fun. The Cooler is a movie that I considered when we were first thinking of this season. And then A Mighty Wind, although we just recently talked about a Christopher Guest movie, so it seemed like it made sense to go with something else.
Some good picks in there. And Dave, I mean, look, Todd Phillips was the premier comedy director for, many years, and this was the one that kind of really catapulted him, not Road Trip. So yeah. I think good pick, and we'll see if he ever does comedy again or if he just makes Joker movies.
Joker 2. Can't wait for that. The cult classic that we talked about, the future cult classic, as Dave alluded to, was The Room. And I like, there really was no other choice for this. I was looking at our discussions, and Jason, I don't think I suggested anything else. And Jason, you suggested Love Actually, which we ended up having in our audience choice poll. And I think Love Actually that's just a classic, like not cult.
Yeah.
And then you had also suggested Secondhand Lions. Does that have a cult?
People love that movie. Really? People love that movie. You're talking about Master and Commander, Secondhand Lions with Duvall, Michael Caine, and Haley Joel Osment. People love that movie, man.
Okay. I've never seen it.
I think I saw it. It's, if I'm not mistaken, Haley Joel Osment's a kid who, for whatever reason, I don't know if his parents die or if they have to like move and he needs someone to watch, live with. So he goes to live with like his two uncles on a farm. And I could be making this all up, but I'm pretty sure that's what happens in the film, Josh. So
all right. Well, maybe something to watch.
I had another one to throw in the mix, although of course The Room had to be this episode, but the Animatrix, I think, is something that has a real big cult following amongst, nerds and stuff like that. Yeah, like it is definitely a big thing. I mean, I think they like it more than the Matrix sequels, that's for sure.
Yeah. I'll tell you though, The Room, man, it's fun to watch. Disaster Artist is fun to watch. Researching The Room is fun. All things The Room.
Yeah, I mean, there was really no question that we would do anything other than The Room. So that was
I would have canceled this podcast.
Yeah, we don't want that.
I said no more if that was the case. Josh, our Audience Choice Award, you mentioned Love Actually. We went with Christmas movies, and we got a good response, and it was Elf, Bad Santa, Love Actually. Any would have been a deserving winner there. And I do think we will get to one, if not both of those, around the holidays at some point. Some other categories we came up with: horrible representations of hip-hop, Cradle to the Grave, Honey, and Malibu's Most Wanted. That would have been an interesting one.
Yeah, I don't know. Those are so different. I mean, maybe they all horribly represent hip hop, but in very different ways. So R.I.P. DMX also.
Yes.
It's a weird time to, sure. And Josh, the last one, which I think would have been a big hit, especially with our fans down under, are Australians with Names. Danny Deckchair, Ned Kelly, The Honorable Wally Norman, Kangaroo Jack, and Ned. All movies from 2003. All with Australians, all with names.
That was not a good idea at all. So
it does make me laugh though, that category.
I've seen at least two of those. I've seen Danny Deckchair and Kangaroo Jack. So
boy.
Tell us about them.
Let's not. So yeah, that was the end of our season. And we always appreciate people giving us suggestions, giving us feedback. And when we announced this season, we had a lot of feedback, which was great. A lot of people with their thoughts on what movies from 2003 they wanted to hear about, including a lot of movies that we talked about. So hopefully people found it interesting. A selection here of ones that we haven't mentioned yet. Rich Johnson suggested one of the crappiest Coen brothers movies. That's his quote. Intolerable Cruelty, which I kind of like,
Oh,
actually.
I will tell Rich Johnson, whose podcasts I've done. He produces Kenny Banya, Steve Hinman podcast, which I'm on from time to time. I will tell Rich Johnson he is wrong. It is the crappiest Coen brothers movie. And the only other possibility is The Lady Killers.
Yeah, The Lady Killers is worse. I haven't seen it in a long time, but I remember kind of liking Intolerable Cruelty. Jeremy Vaughn, always a dedicated fan, suggested Runaway Jury, the John Grisham adaptation, along with some other things that we've talked about already, but thank you for that. Adriana Lopez Stroman suggested Holes, which I remember actually really liking at the time with Shia LaBeouf.
It's good. We watched it about a year ago. It's no Timmy failure, but it's good.
All right. Really, lots of Timmy failure connections going on here. She also suggested The Italian Job, the action remake, which I've never seen, but was a big success.
I feel like that's a movie everybody talked about at the time. So I mean, it is big, kind of.
Yeah, it's one of those movies that was on cable like a million times afterwards that people would just watch like 10 minutes of it or something because it was on, I feel like. Gina, Dave's wife, suggested Lost in Translation. So shout out to Gina. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Kevin Fiddler had suggested Ang Lee's version of Hulk, which came up. And that could have almost, I don't know if that was quite floppy enough, but it was certainly perceived as a failure. And was
it made money, but I think critically it was a bomb and nobody wanted it. And they rebooted the Hulk very quickly. It would be interesting to talk about because I'm pretty sure the whole third act, the big battle, is stars exploding on each other, maybe, if I remember correctly. So.
Yeah, it's that, like Master Grand Commander is another like big studio movie that was kind of a misfit at the time that certainly has a cult following at this point.
But Josh, it did star Eric Bana, an Australian with a name.
True, we could have thrown that in. Kevin Fiddler also suggested Robert Rodriguez's Once Upon a Time in Mexico, the sequel to Desperado, or was that the third one in the trilogy, maybe?
I think it's the third. Josh, is Robert Rodriguez ever going to make a good movie again?
Probably not. Yeah, but don't say that to Dave, the world's biggest fan of Alita Battle Angel.
A fan of Alita Battle Angel.
All right. Donnie Thompson suggested Something's Gotta Give with Jack Nicholson and Diane Keaton, the Nancy Meyers movie.
That's a whole genre we really haven't explored, kind of the older romantic dramedies, people getting on with age but still trying to find love and their place in the world. We really haven't explored that on this show all that.
Yeah, and I mean, that is a movie that a lot of people love, and I remember not liking at that time, but that whole, Nancy Meyers has has cornered this market. So, something for us to get to maybe eventually. Michelle Wilmoth mentioned Party Monster with Macaulay Culkin. Wonderland, the biopic about John Holmes, the porn star, and a movie that
those could almost go side by side.
They could. They kind of have a connection there. The whole weird underground world with murder, and a movie that came up in some episode recently that I hate, 21 Grams, the Iñárritu film, which is just the worst.
Okay,
that's all.
I know you want to vent about it, so
no. Let's move on. We don't need to. Okay. Thank you, Michelle, for your suggestions. Bruce Purcell suggested Head of State, the movie where Chris Rock is the president. Dave is laughing. Have you seen that, Dave?
Oh yeah, for sure. I saw that in the theater.
That's such
not great, but
has there really been a successful? I think about Dave as the movie of like, hey, President blank, can't blank, so we have to have X be the president now, Yeah,
and President blank is taken over by X. That's quite a genre.
You know what I mean?
Yes,
it's the fish out of water and the person has to become the president, right? I feel like the only good one I can think of is Dave. Am I wrong?
I mean, I don't know if that's a thriving subgenre necessarily, but I did like Dave. I mean, I haven't seen that in a long time with Kevin Kline.
Bulworth was fun.
Yeah, but he's not the president.
Yeah, I kind
of. He wasn't.
Bulworth is one of those movies that's like a train wreck and also brilliant, at the same time. And you got to give Warren Beatty credit for just going all out with that film.
I like Bulworth a lot, but I'm talking about the president.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
No, maybe that's it. Bo Pearson suggested House of Sand and Fog, which, as we mentioned, I hate also, along with 21
But I
Grams.
liked a lot.
I like it too.
Jameson Tufo suggested Bringing Down the House with Steve Martin and Queen Latifah.
Yeah, another budding genre we haven't talked about.
The genre
having
of
having too many kids.
No, that's not what that is. That's you're thinking of Cheaper by the Dozen. That's the movie where it's like, what if a black person and a white person were friends?
Yeah.
Oh, well, then I'm glad I confused that, to be honest with you, because I think my genre actually has some value of like, how do you take care of all these kids? But the idea of like exploring a black person and white person being friends, like we got to be moving past that at this point.
Yeah, I think we talked about, multiple comedies between Old School and Bad Santa where, some elements might be seen as problematic now. I feel like Bringing Down the House is just all that all the time. So better for us not to have talked about it. Greg Philmont mentioned Shattered Glass, which is a movie we also talked about. Girl with a Pearl Earring and Cold Mountain, which was a big Oscar movie that I think like some of these, like Seabiscuit or something, it was this prestige movie that was touted and nominated for all these awards, and no one really remembers anymore.
Yeah, but isn't that, we mentioned Renee Zellweger because of Down with Love. That's what she won for, right?
She did. And I mean, maybe it's worth revisiting. I haven't seen it probably since it was in theaters, but
it's got a good soundtrack.
There you go. And it's a movie that, again, that people don't really talk about anymore. So
hey, Josh.
Yeah.
Speaking about revisiting things, in 2003, we can't leave out revisiting Bobby Cannavale as Gyp Rossetti when he says, I got a gun. You got a gun. We all got guns.
I feel like 1977 was the height of our seasons for Jason impressions, but we had some good ones this season as well, including that. And you want to do your Tommy Wiseau one more time to end the season?
I mean, I guess.
You don't have
Dave
to.
wants to do it. Lisa, you're tearing me apart. I think I lost it.
That's all right. That's
leave it in 2003.
Leave it.
Oh, hi, Dave.
But thank you again to all of those listeners who sent us those suggestions. It's always fascinating to see what what people remember, what people hold on to from these past years, and a lot of good stuff that we might revisit or get to in bonuses or something down the road. And so that's going to do it for this episode and this season of Awesome Movie Year. And check us out on social media.
Oh, we are on social media, Josh. I'm Jason Harris Comedy on Facebook and Instagram, J Harris Comedy on Twitter. And speaking of things that should have been left in 2003, my website is goforjason.com. We're at awesomemovieyear.com, Awesome Movie Year on Facebook and Instagram, Awesome Movie Pod on Twitter.
And my website, joshbellhateseverything.com, I started in 2004, I think. So almost an artifact of this time. It's still there, sort of. Josh Bell Hates Everything on Facebook and at Signal Bleed on Twitter. And listen to our producer, David Rosen's awesome podcast, Piecing It Together.
Check out Piecing It Together wherever you listen to podcasts, and follow us on social media at Piecing Pod, and also check out our Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces.
Yeah, a lot of our suggestions that we talked about came from that group, so always appreciate.
Yeah, and we do cover the movies a lot. When we build the seasons, we make sure we put in some suggestions. Not from dumb idiots who don't understand Bad Santa, but from the smart listeners.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I left out, there were a lot of suggestions for things that we did cover, but, we just kind of looking at the highlights of other things. Jason, do you want to reveal what we are talking about in our next season?
Josh, it would be my privilege. We are going back to the year when Dave's parents first met each other and their torrid romance just lit up the East Coast. Sex in cars, sex on couches, sex in parents' beds. 1967, Josh, the year of Dave's parents, the birth of their romance, and also a lot of great films.
Yeah, is that true? Or did you just totally make all that up about Dave's parents?
Well, I'm not going to answer that part of it, but I am excited for 1967, our season.
I am too, and this is the furthest back in film history we've gone yet, and I'm always excited for us to take a look further back, and gives us a chance to discover more that we haven't seen before. hopefully we'll get some great suggestions from listeners on that as well. And we're starting with the box office champ. So what will be that first episode, Jason?
Josh, not just the box office champion, but an all-time classic, one of the greatest of all American films, The Graduate, Mike Nichols.
So tune in next time for The Graduate, and thanks for listening to Awesome Movie Year.
Thank you for listening to Awesome Movie Year. Make sure to follow Awesome Movie Year on Facebook, at Awesome Movie Pod on Twitter, and at Awesome Movie Year on Instagram. And if you like the show, review us and rate us with 5 stars on Apple Podcasts.
An All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.
And we're starting with the box office champ. So what will be that first episode, Jason?
Josh, you tell me.
It's The Graduate. Do you want to deliver it or do you want me to?
Yeah, let's do that
All right.
again.